r/ask Reddit. What's the most ridiculous rule in your place of work? I once needed a pen. Figured this was a reasonable ask. Went to the supply closet on my floor, which was locked. Asked the floor's admin. She told me to go to the main supply room in the basement. Went to the basement and explained my situation of needing a pen. They told me all requests for supplies must be approved by my department head. Problem is, being new, I'd never met my department head. She also worked in San Francisco, I worked in Milwaukee, so I needed to send an email both introducing myself and asking her if I had permission to get a pen from the supply closet. Well, did you get the pen or not? In my first 1x1 with my boss, she asked me how everything was going. I said fine, but explained that I wasn't able to get a pen, which made taking notes in meetings difficult. She got up, went to her desk, and grabbed me a handful of pens. At least you got the pens? All recreational activity is forbidden on company time and resources, except fantasy football. That's why I got my boss into Reddit. If you want something unblocked on the network, you make sure a director level wants it unblocked. No IT worker will block Reddit. No accusing other staff members of being witches. Yep, it happened, so we had to make a rule. I run a hostel in Uganda. Sounds like a hostile work environment, which is exactly the kind of rule a witch would create. I used to work for a large bank. We had an attendance policy that was so complicated it actually created an incentive for employees to take an entire day off rather than be tardy too often. My high school had that too. If you were late enough to miss first period, you got a cut, which was a detention. Even being late to first period 3 times counted as a cut, which was another detention. An absence was just an absence. No cuts, no detentions. My school has a rule where you came in more than 2 hours or so later, they just counted you as absent for the day, but also punished you for being late. So anytime you have an appointment or just oversleep by a little bit, you may as well just abandon the whole day. We can't ask others if they want to come grab a coffee in the break room. Just develop a subtle nod that means the same thing. Slap on the bum and a wink. We have a lock on the first aid kits, so if you just need a band-aid for a cut, you have to get the key from the safety guy, which in turn makes it a reportable accident with mountains of paperwork and investigations. We use an unbelievable amount of duct tape now. We had Spoon and Milk Queen who governed all the spoons and milk for my office. She would go round desks and hound people for spoons. People brought their own spoons in so they wouldn't have to deal with her, but she didn't understand that people could bring stuff in from home and was adamant that they must belong to the company and got angry if you opposed her spoon reclamation mission. She also redesigned our kitchen. In her grand redesign, she left out a cutlery drawer, but we have a triple height pots pans drawer, so that's something. Although no cooker or pots pans, so it's completely empty. Thankfully she was let go. A rule that said if you have time to lean, you have time to clean, which fairly obviously meant if there was no work then you should be cleaning things. It was at an aircraft servicing station that was fairly small, but we needed a crew of at least 3 people for larger planes. The problem was that sometimes there were just no planes, so there was no work. We would clean for a couple hours and then just run out of stuff to clean. But according to management, that was no good. We had to be busy. It got to be that we would fight over work when it came in because everyone was so bored, and finding pretend busy work was much harder than just working. I remember getting the crew together to pick up pebbles off the taxiway for a couple hours. There's an old joke in aviation, go sweep the taxiway. So we actually did it. When I was in the military, I saw a buddy of mine sitting outside crying. I went and consoled him best as I could. Apparently he was just depressed and unhappy. After he was feeling a bit better, I went to go and find someone to tell them what was happening. They knew. In fact, he had been crying so much lately that they had instituted a no crying at your desk policy, which is why he was outside. I used to work for the now long defunct books, movies, and music store Media Play. Just one of the 285 reasons that poorly run business ran into the ground was the tardy attendance policy. If you were literally 1 second late clocking in, even hours before the store opened, it was a really big deal. You'd not only be formally written up, but lectured like a child, oftentimes berated even. If you were tardy 3 times, bye bye. However, if you no-showed and then called 2 hours later saying you were sick, okay, thank you, feel better. This trained everyone to just take a sick day instead of being half a second late to work. I can't tell you how many times you'd see a co-worker screeching into the parking lot before work after fighting traffic from a wreck or whatever, noticing it was 8:01, and then slowly driving off to go home and feign being sick. This was particularly upsetting when it was a pull-down stock week when we needed every hand on deck but had unusually early shifts. My job years ago tried to implement a very strict attendance policy like that, where if you were 1 second late you would get written up. Till one Saturday a guy who had worked there for like 30 years shows up to work 30 seconds late. They pull him into the office and write him up. He then gets up and tells them he's going home. Working Saturdays was voluntary and he basically said, I don't have to be here today so I'm going home. He was doing them a favor by working that day, but when they wrote him up for being 30 seconds late he basically ducked them over by just going home. That policy didn't last too much longer. For the most part if you're a few minutes late it's no big deal at all. If you're late all the time they'll have a word with you or write you up. But they understand shit happens sometimes that's out of your control to cause you to be late. My workplace doesn't let you use the word problems. Instead, we have to say challenges if something is wrong, as a problem is a negative word, and challenges promotes the fact that there is room to fix said problem. I'd love to have a boss tell me my drinking has become a challenge. Fireman. Our risk management department decided long ago that poles were too risky for us, so we use the stairs. We have poles. Anyway, now the newest rule is no free weights, as in no free weights to work out. Stay fit, go into burning high rise absolutely. Walk around the station carrying 40-pound dumbbells. Too risky. I feel you. My FD just got some workout equipment, rowing machine and bike. It had been delayed due to liability concerns, but we actually have a fire pole that we use. It's all very confusing. I used to work at a place in which my boss implemented a no more than 2 glasses a day water policy. What a dunt. I ignored this rule and complained directly to our CEO and the matter ended later that day. What was weird though was the majority of people actually followed the rule and some even shopped me up to HR about breaking the rules. I left not long after that because not only was my boss a bellend, but if my colleagues were going to HR over me drinking water, then I obviously couldn't trust them. Old job of mine in a warehouse. Our stations were pretty far apart, so when we listened to music we'd all usually have our own stuff playing. Not a problem since you could barely hear the neighbor's music. Well, the CEO didn't like hearing multiple songs when walking through the warehouse. He made a rule that we all either had to listen to the same music, or none at all. Can't have my hands in my pockets. I worked as a call receiver. We never saw a customer. We were only on the phones with them. Rule. Your hair must only be a natural color. I dyed my hair the same exact color that someone from a different shift had. I was reprimanded. I told them that if the rule is not enforced for everyone, they couldn't single me out. Their reasoning for letting the other person have that color but not me. Mine was my real hair. It dyed an unnatural color. Hers was a weave that could be changed very easily. Really? Then why hasn't she been asked to change her hair? Because that shit is expensive. They gave up trying to convince me they were in the right. I had a boss who didn't like the outrageous color I had in my hair. I'm a natural redhead. If we want to take a full 5-day week off we need to use 2 vacation days, 1 personal, and 2 more vacation days. Can never use 3 vacation days straight. We work alternating days, 3 on 4 off, 4 on 3 off. If you take vacation on your short week, which is 3 working days, they dock you 5 vacation days for taking an entire week off. How is that legal? My dad told me this one a while back. He used to work for a PR firm. The way he described the office environment, think The Office but in the 1980s. The company hired a corporate efficiency specialist to come in and improve things. She came in and implemented all kinds of rules, which seemed to follow some sort of caste system. Her philosophy was, the higher your office rank, the more perks you get. Her idea of perks, number of pictures you are allowed in your cubicle, whether you are allowed to have a potted plant or not. Coffee mugs were only allowed to senior employees. Others had to use paper cups. Being allowed to leave the office for lunch was also considered a perk. Needless to say, a coup soon followed, and she was tossed out on her hinny. Old workplace had assigned desk location for various things like phone and stapler. You were also only allowed 2 personal items on your desk. I was written up BC. I brought my own red stapler and it didn't fit in between the lines put on the desk. You should have burned that place down. At my old job, HR held a meeting to tell us that there was too much swearing on the sales floor. Someone raised their hand and pointed out that swearing is very common in our industry and that is the way that our customers speak. HR later sent out a memo explaining that swearing should be limited to conversations with clients. It was amazing. Had a workplace time our bathroom breaks and deduct them from our allotted 15-minute breaks or lunch. We had to go see the office manager to get a key to open the restroom. As soon as we left his office he would start a timer. When you got back he would stop the timer and tell you how much time you needed to deduct from your lunch or next break. They watched our breaks like a hawk. Also, if you made a mistake they would stand over you and time you while you fixed it and deduct that from your lunch or breaks. You couldn't bring anything that smells for lunch and they had no way of heating anything up. I worked out my contract and split. Men can't wear shorts. However, women can wear dresses and skirts. What the duck do they think? We are all walking around with monster dongs that would hang out of the bottom of our shorts. It's hot and I want to wear shorts. I love shorts. They're comfy and easy to wear. Former job, you couldn't eat at your desk. The team managers however were pretty tolerant. On a hot day they would sometimes even hand out popsicles. The regulation people, who were especially in charge on the weekends, when no team managers were around, were very strict with this. A colleague of mine was shouted at because she ate a small pretzel, which was her breakfast. Then again, some colleagues would casually eat a whole pizza or kebab while making a huge mess. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.